This video is sponsored by War Thunder. More on that later. Ark has released 46 flyers in the last 10 years, and in this video, I'll be ranking every single one of them in a tier list format. I'll talk about every creature briefly, and won't be ranking creatures within the same tier for the sake of time. Unlike previous rankings like this, I'm keeping this list entirely objective, so even if I hate a creature, if it's OP, the ratings will show for it. I also took into account how a creature interacts with the entire game. For example, if it's really annoying in the wild, that does dock at some points. I did throw in a few aerial maps that I don't necessarily think are considered flyers, but I don't think anything here is too outlandish. Without further ado, let's get into it. Up first is the Archaeopteryx, which I'm putting into the D tier. The Archaeopteryx is one of those that I don't really think is considered a flyer because it does more of a glide, but it's just not very good. The main issue with it is definitely that the parachute exists, it just completely overshadows it, and that the only really viable use case for it is skipping the tech cave when there's so many other choices for that instead. It's also pretty annoying to tame because it spawns on the redwoods, has a small hitbox, and is very weak so it can die to PVE. It's also just really fast, which does not help. If you could use the Archaeopteryx with only one hand and were able to wield weapons and other things like grappling hooks on the back of it, it would be a lot better, but you simply can't do this, so there's really not that much of a place in the game for it. It's not annoying enough to be F tier, but it's definitely bad. Up next is the RG, which is an easy S tier. I'm aware there's better flyers in the game than the RG, but it's so versatile, it's excellent, it's accessible, it's really crucial for farming in the early game on most maps, and you get really great utility like having the smithy and the saddle, being able to carry creatures in your mouth so you can actually carry 2 creatures at once, having incredibly good weight reductions for a lot of key resources while having a great weight stat, and being able to regen off of creatures after you kill them, which just gives you so much more survivability out in harsh areas. There are creatures in the game like the Rhinoignatha, the Skiff, which are better for flying options in terms of farming, but it's just so good for so many situations, it has to go in S tier. Up next is the Dimorphodon, which I'm placing into C tier. In my video where I ranked every creature, the Dimorphodon actually got the most love in the comments out of any creature in the game. My argument was that it was annoying in the wild because it could damage you off the back of your mount, and that as a shoulder mount, it was a bit underwhelming compared to other options. But I had a lot of people saying that they're great when you send a pack of them at somebody, you can pump pretty good stats into them for how small they are, and that even though there are better shoulder mounts in the game, being a shoulder mount in general just makes it a pretty good choice. I had it in D tier in that ranking compared to every creature, which is pretty low, especially for flyers, which are generally pretty strong compared to the average creature in the game. So me moving it up to C tier for this is actually a pretty big adjustment. It's more so a B tier creature overall for me now. Shoulder mounts always give decent utility, you get very solid stats out of this thing, and breeding a solid pack of these is just a killing machine. The one thing I haven't changed my mind on is that it's really annoying to get damaged by these when you're in the dragon fight, but you can't win them all. The Giant Bee is up next, and the ranking was spoiled in its name, it's going into B tier for me. The reason it's in B tier for me is because the utility it provides with the passive honey farms is incredibly good, but you can't ride it, there's no strength utility out of it, so there is a ceiling of where it can go. Up next is the Ichthyornis, which is going straight into F tier. The Ichthyornis is actually not that bad as a tame. It can go and get you fish in the early game. It can give you prime meat from dodos too, which is a hidden ability, but it's pretty good. But the reality is, even though it's a shoulder mount and the tame is okay, it's just so annoying that it has to go in F tier. This did go to the bottom of the D tier in that every creature ranking that I mentioned a while ago, but yet again, flyers are way better than the average creature in the game, so the ranking did go down here. When I'm being fully objective and not trying to be a bit of a contrarian in terms of my rankings, it's definitely one of the worst flyers in Ark. Up next is the Manta. Yeah, the Manta. That's right. You can actually fly on the Manta. You can't fly on it in the normal mode, but if you jump out of the water and then type the word fly, you can just fly around on a Manta. Obviously, this is going into F tier, but it was a fun fact and I figured I'd include it. Up next is the Onyx, which is going right next to the Ichthyornis and the Manta in F tier. The Onyx is, in my opinion, the most useless tame in Ark, and it's really annoying in the wild too. As a tame, it doesn't even give rabies effectively, which is what you would think the best utility would be for it. The tamed version can give rabies, but it's nowhere near 100% of the time, which is what it would need to be a decent choice. And in the wild, this thing is super annoying in caves when a lot of them spawn. They can give you rabies, they're ugly, and they're obnoxious to tame anyway. Even if they were good, they would still be annoying. Definitely the bottom of F tier on this list. The Pelagornis is up next, and we can finally break the F tier streak. This is going into C tier. The Pelagornis is pretty solid for the early game. The saddle is unlocked very early and it's easy to tame. And it's excellent for farming organic polymer because it gets a weight reduction on it. And it really is built for crushing penguins because it can track the penguins in the water by floating on the surface and hitting down into the water. And it can absolutely maul the baby penguins on ice too. Besides this utility, the Pelagornis is kind of lacking. Its stats are bad, it's not super fast, and its weight's very bad, but it's definitely not useless, and there is some situations where it's actually pretty good. The Pteranodon is next, and I'm putting it firmly in A tier. I don't think the Pteranodon can be higher than A tier simply because it's weaker and doesn't have as many late game utilities as other flyers, but it's definitely great, especially for the purpose it serves. It's incredibly easy to tame, the saddle is very accessible, it's very fast, especially when you use the C-spin ability, and it can be used to get higher tier flyers and other high tier creatures very early on. In PvP, you can also use the Pteranodon's C-spin ability to dive certain bases, which is really strong too, but I view the Pteranodon more as a stepping stone into late game content. It's very good, it serves a very important purpose, but it's simply not good enough in itself due to its weaker stats, and due to its lack of utility on top of its not great stats. I just don't think it can be S tier, but it's definitely A tier. The Quetzal is up next, and I'm going to put this into A tier right next to the Pteranodon. A lot of people online say the Quetzal is entirely useless now because the Rhino-Ignatha got released, but I totally disagree. Sure, the Quetzal is slow, and the Rhino-Ignatha can carry more things than the Quetzal, but the Quetzal also has something that no other flyer in the game has, a platform saddle. Technically the Desert Titan and the Oasisaur have them, but I don't really count those in the same category as the Quetzal. It also has fantastic weight, very high stats, and it's extremely easy to tame if you have the net projectile. The platform saddle gives really good utility, especially for the Desert Titan fight, and for a lot of PvP applications where you're trying to raid certain bases. The creature is definitely not as good as it once was, but it's still an absolutely amazing flyer. Speaking of the Rhino-Ignatha, that's an easy S tier. I personally am not a huge fan of this creature for a couple of reasons I've already talked about in previous videos, but when I'm being fully objective, I can't deny this thing is absolutely great. It's fast, can carry an incredible amount of creatures, can carry structures around, can fly underwater, has projectiles, really strong stats, and it's pretty maneuverable, especially for its size. There's not really much else to say. The taming process is kind of annoying, but it's just the strongest flyer in the game in terms of pure power, while being able to carry a lot of creatures for utility. The only actual downside when it's tamed is it gets a huge speed nerf when it's carrying creatures in its claws, but besides that, there's nothing to dock for this thing. The Tapejara is pretty easy to rank for me. I think it's firmly in the B tier. It's an excellent creature. It does have really good utility in terms of having a tech saddle, being extremely maneuverable, having 2 seats so the back player can use weapons, and being able to latch onto ledges so you can regain stamina. It's also pretty fast and pretty easy to tame, especially if you use rare flowers to aggro it, but it simply isn't as good as a lot of other flyers in the game. It doesn't serve as many specific purposes extremely well. It's not as good as the Pteranodon in the early game, it's not as good as the RG for farming, and it's not as versatile as something like a Rhino-Ignatha. Love the creature, but it's not the best. Up next is the Tech Suit. The Tech Suit isn't a creature obviously, but it does help you fly, so I'm going to include it. I'm putting it into A tier. It's really good. The Fed Suit is something I'm using in the B-roll, but it's not what I'm ranking. I'm ranking the actual Tech Suit. It's very strong, gives good armor, gives you a lot of abilities and maneuverability, but it does take element to charge. You have to wait till late game to use it, and it's not ridiculously OP for a lot of things outside of obviously being very maneuverable in PvP. I think the Tech Skiff, for example, is much better than the Tech Suit because the Tech Skiff is better for way more things, is much faster, and it has a ton more utility for it. The Tech Suit is great, but I don't think it's the best. And for the record, the Fed Suit would probably be in C tier because I think missing out on the armor rating is very detrimental, especially because it still costs element when you're not on Gen 2. The Lamantria is next, and it's definitely not good, but I'm going to put it into D tier. It can attack, it has bad stats, it is somewhat easy to get in the early game of Scorched Earth compared to other options, so it's not the worst thing in the world. And I recently learned that the best utility for the Lamantria is actually slowing down people that are trying to rush turrets. You can use the poison gas that it generates to slow down attackers, which is actually apparently pretty good, but the use case is pretty niche. In PvE, the thing is terrible and overshadowed by the Procoptodon on the only map that it's even good on, which is Scorched Earth. It's definitely not annoying, so there's no way I put it into F tier, but it's nowhere near C tier. Before I talk about the next Ark flyer, let me tell you about War Thunder, the all-in-one vehicle combat game that throws you right into the action. Whether you're taking over the skies in a jet, crushing the battlefield in a tank, or traveling the seas in a warship, War Thunder has it all. The best part is that it's totally free to play on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and mobile. You're able to use over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from 10 major nations. These range from biplanes and armored cars of the 1920s to fighter jets and battle tanks of the modern day. What really makes War Thunder stand out is the insane attention to detail. The graphics look amazing and are optimized to look great regardless of your specs, unlike most games. The sound design pulls you right into the battle as well, and my favorite feature is the X-ray damage system that lets you see the destruction you're causing in real time. Join a massive global community of over 70 million players by clicking the links in the description and pinned comment. If you're a new or returning player on PC or console and haven't logged in the past 6 months, you can grab a limited time bonus pack. It includes 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days premium, exclusive vehicles, and the Eagle of Valor vehicle decoration. Whether you're a fan of history or just love high-paced combat, War Thunder is the game for you. Big thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Up next is the Phoenix, which I'm putting into B tier. The Phoenix is a lot of effort for not an insane reward. It's one of the faster flyers in the game, can traverse the map pretty quickly, is a moving furnace which can be useful, but the weight stat does kind of hold it back in this use case, and it generates silica pearls and rarely black pearls, which can be pretty helpful on a map like Scorched Earth. It's a really cool design. I absolutely love using the thing, and it's definitely a flex. It also has some cool attacks and decent stats, but it really doesn't excel in enough, especially for how much effort you have to put in to tame it for it to be higher than B tier. The Vulture is up next, and I'm going to put it into C tier. The Vulture is actually pretty underrated. The best ability for it is that it harvests spoiled meat off corpses as opposed to normal meat, so it can be really effective, especially in the early game, in helping you get narcotics. It's also a shoulder mount, so you get the perks for that. It's really easy to tame because, yet again, it eats spoiled meat, and it's surprisingly pretty strong, especially compared to other shoulder mounts. Alright, next let's get into the 4 Wyverns, starting with the Poison Wyvern, which I'm putting into the A tier. I've been pretty consistent on my rankings for the Wyverns forever. The Poison Wyvern is arguably the best in PvP. Its Poison Breath ability is very strong. All the Wyverns have good stats and are all fast, so they're all pretty good choices. And the reason the Poison Wyvern isn't an S tier is because it's just really bad in PvE. There's basically no reason to use it over the other 3. The Fire Wyvern lands itself in B tier simply because I don't think it's as good as the Poison Wyvern or the Lightning Wyvern in PvP. And I think it's about as good as the Ice Wyvern and worse than the Lightning Wyvern in PvE. It's a middle of the road choice. There's some useful utility like getting the magma source to breed with it instead of putting them in lava, which is nice, but it's really just not enough to make it higher than the Poison or the Lightning Wyvern. The Lightning Wyvern is easily S tier for me. It's arguably the best in PvP. The only debate there is between it and the Poison Wyvern. And in PvE, in my opinion, it's miles better than everything else. It does an incredible amount of damage, has all the perks the other Wyverns have as well, and it's just an amazing creature, easily one of the best flyers in the game. And lastly is the Ice Wyvern, which is C tier. I'm not going to rip on it too much. You do get some cool interactions with the Ice Breath, like slowing down griffins that are diving, and slowing down wild creatures, which can be helpful in PvE. This thing is completely useless though in PvP. The other nice perks for Wyverns that I'll talk about here for some more positives in this section is that they can carry a lot of creatures, they can farm thatch, and they're really fast. The only major downside for all the Wyverns is no saddle, so you don't get any armor. Up next is the Featherlight, which I'm placing into B tier. All the light pets in the game have pretty useful utility. It's very helpful in Aberration to avoid Reaper spawning on you and to weaken Nameless. It's helpful for getting impregnated by Reaper Queens on both Genesis 2 and Aberration because it helps you get them low on HP. And you need one to sacrifice in the Ragnarok Labyrinth Cave, which is super helpful too. The reason it's only in B tier is because it's replaceable with other light pets, and just due to the fact that it's by far the least accessible out of the 4 light pet options. And there are creatures in the game like the Seeker that do target you when you have lights on, so it's not always the best choice to have. Up next is the Rock Drake, which I'll admit probably shouldn't be on the list, but it's just so awesome. You use it basically like a flyer on Aberration because it's the best mobility option on the map, and the gliding ability is incredible. If anything was going to be on this list that wasn't a flyer, I would have picked the Rock Drake because it really does feel when you're gliding like you're flying. The reason it's S tier is because it's incredibly maneuverable. You can use weapons on the back of it. Its stats are insane. It can swim well. It can do caves well. It's easily able to take on the boss fight, tough creatures like the Alpha Reapers, and avoid pretty much every threat on one of Ark's toughest maps. It's just one of the best mobility options in Ark of all time, easily S tier. One of the easiest things to rank on this entire list is the Seeker, which is going straight into F tier. The Seeker is untamable. It has a really annoying mechanic where it targets light, which makes it one of the most annoying creatures in the game because you already have to have light on to deal with the Nameless and the Reapers. These only spawn in really dangerous areas, so on maps where you're already dealing with those threats and are forced to have the lights, these are going to target you and there's not much you can do about it. It's definitely interesting game design with a pick your poison format, but this is pretty much always the poison you pick, and it's not a fun poison. And they're just ugly, they do a decent amount of damage with decent stats. There's no redeeming quality here, there's no reason to put it higher than F. The Griffin is up next, and it's another easy S tier, especially after they just added the breeding mechanic in Ark Ragnarok Ascended. It's even higher in the S tier. The Griffin has an incredible dive ability which makes it really fast, has great stats across the board, you're able to use weapons on the back of it with multiple seats, and it does an insane amount of damage with a high skill cap if you know how to level out your dives and do 10x the melee damage you do on your normal hits. It's just really strong, and very few things in the game can deal with a good Griffin rider. In PvE, it's really useful for traveling around the map and farming a lot of drops, and in PvP, it's just really useful for a lot of fighting scenarios, now especially that you get the imprint bonus. Love this thing, better in Ark Ascended, and it was already S tier and evolved. The gas bags is up next, and I'm placing it into the A tier. The reason the gas bags is A tier is because of its synergy with the Dreadmare. You can synergize it with the Dreadmare because of its low drag weight and high weight stat to be a really effective farming combination. In Ark Survival Evolved, it was probably around B tier just because it had really good travel distance, was able to soak very effectively with its great stats and its ability to suck in air to have more damage resistance, and its ability to transport high weight amounts of loot because it still had good weight even though the Dreadmare wasn't in the game. Just comboing it with the Dreadmare though easily puts it up at least 1 tier. I think A tier is fair because it's probably around B tier and Evolved and S tier and Ascended. Another A tier creature from Extinction is the Mana Garmer. This is also arguably not supposed to be on this list because it doesn't fly, but it does treat itself like a flyer in my opinion. The aerial mobility it offers is ridiculous. It's faster than almost every single creature in the game. The only reason it's not an S tier creature anymore is because the stamina usage is so bad. You run out of stamina so fast, you can't hover in the air and fly around anymore like you used to by any means. But having an Ice Breath ability, being arguably the fastest creature in the game at top speed, and being essentially unkillable in the PvE and PvP sides of the game as long as you don't get hit with a net is ridiculously strong. You can even use this for the caves on Extinction. It's one of the best choices for that in the entire game because you can just skip most of the obstacles. The creature's just absolutely incredible. I can't compliment it enough. It used to be way too strong and not fun at all, but after they nerfed the stamina, it's at a pretty decent balancing point now. Up next I have the Scout, which I'm placing in D tier. When it's in the wild, it's kind of annoying because if it detects you, it'll just send the enforcers and the defense units at you, which can be really annoying in the early game Sanctuary. And as a tame, it's really not helpful either, besides the fact that it can repair your mech. It does have infrared vision as well, but this is entirely useless because you can just use a Snow Owl. Snow Owls literally spawn on this map as well. They're faster than Scouts, they have better stamina, better stats, and you're on the back of it, so it's much safer to use that than a Scout anyway. The second to last Extinction creature on the list is the Snow Owl, which I'm placing into the S tier easily. The Snow Owl has a lot of utility. It has a dive bomb, which is really nice, so it's very fast. It has great stats, and it's able to freeze enemies while healing your nearby creatures, which is incredibly valuable. With just the abilities I've talked about so far, it would already be an A tier, but it also has 2 more exceptionally useful utility pieces. First of all, it has infrared vision like I just talked about, which is really good for finding honey, and for just looking around the map for smaller creatures that you need to tame. And it also produces Snow Owl pellets, which is excellent in gacha farming to make an automatic gacha farm on the new map. Just a lot of utility with a really nice design. I love this creature, it's easily S tier. Moving on. Next up I have the Desert Titan, which is technically a flying tame. I'm going to put it into the C tier though because it's only a temporary tame. The Desert Titan is obviously incredibly strong. You basically tame it to go wreck bases, and you can even transfer it to maps like Aberration, which is absolutely busted in PvP. With all that being said, the fact that it's a temporary tame just docks it a ton of points. I can't really value a temporary tame anywhere near as much as I value permanent tames. It's definitely a strong creature and has its place, but not every player needs it. You'll never need this thing if you're trying to just play PvE also, because you only need the other 2 Titans to wreck the King Titan. You're better off just killing this thing and getting the drops. Since this list is objective, I'll put the Astro Cetus in D tier as opposed to F tier, but I do absolutely hate this thing. The only thing I'd ever really use the Astro Cetus for is generating Ambergris passively, but it generates so little that it's not even worth your time. It also comes with an ability to teleport. It gets a platform saddle, which I did mention earlier in the video about the Quetzal having that, but the Astro Cetus only spawns on certain maps, so it's less commonly used. It has very solid stats because it's pretty strong, but in reality, it's incredibly slow, it's a giant target, and most players just don't really find use for this thing, including me. It's a meshing nightmare as well because of the teleportation features, so it's just a really not great addition to the game in my opinion. But as a tame, it's not the worst thing in the world. Up next is the Bloodstalker, and I do swear this is the last non-flying flyer on the list, but it's going in S tier. The Bloodstalker is awesome. It moves around the map incredibly fast, it can grab people, which is really good, and it does so much damage in PvP. It has a hovering parachute ability as well, which can be convenient. It's also really easy to get in the early game. Yes, the bog biome is annoying, but getting the blood bags is incredibly easy, and the taming process is also easy. There's just a lot to love about this thing. It's by far the best creature on the Genesis 1 map, so just go for it. It's a great tame. Up next, we have the 3 Crystal Wyverns. The first one is the Tropical Crystal Wyvern, which I'm placing into B tier. The Tropical Crystal Wyvern gets the speed boost ability when it hits the water, and this can be really good. It's great for going to steal other Crystal Wyvern eggs in the middle of the map. It's really accessible in the early game and very easy to tame on the beach with Crystal. And the stats are pretty solid, especially for a flyer. The downside for these 3 Crystal Wyverns, again, of course, is no saddle, no armor. This does hurt a lot, but the Tropical Crystal Wyvern is absolutely awesome. It's easily the second best Crystal Wyvern. The best Crystal Wyvern by far is the Blood Crystal Wyvern because it gets a lifesteal ability. It just makes it the strongest. It's by far the best choice for the boss fight out of the three. I'm going to put it in A tier, but it's honestly pretty close to S. The only reason it's not S tier is because the Crystal Wyverns just have a lot worse stats than regular Wyverns. It is the one you want to be using once you get the option of having all three. The lifesteal just makes it better than the other two, plain and simple. The last Crystal Wyvern of the three is the Ember Crystal Wyvern, which I'm placing into the D tier. The reason it's in the D tier is because it's a worse version of the regular Fire Wyvern. The utility is the exact same, but the stats are a lot worse. This is honestly the worst Wyvern in Ark by a pretty decent margin. The last Crystal Isles creature is the Tropio Ignathus, which I'm placing into the C tier. The Tropio Ignathus is really fun, it's really fast, and it has some cool artillery in the saddle. But the reality is, the tame is not worth the effort. It's pretty rare and it's pretty annoying to tame, and there's just better alternatives like the Tapejara with a tech saddle. If I was ranking how fun every creature in the game was to use, this thing would be an S tier easily. But unfortunately for the Tropio, that is not what today's list is about. The first Gen 2 creature is the Astrodelphus, which I'm putting into the B tier. The Astrodelphus is really fast, has great stamina conservation, its saddle is equipped to be really strong in PvP, it's very maneuverable because you can get short bursts of speed with it, and you can basically fly all day on this thing. With that being said, outside of the PvP side of the game, there is zero utility for this thing. It's also a very late game creature unless you get a saddle from a drop because you have to ascend to unlock the saddle for it. Definitely a cool creature, definitely a strong creature, but it's not versatile enough to be higher than B tier. Up next I have the Maywing and the Mayguana, which I'm placing into the S tier. Both of these creatures are the exact same, they're both incredibly good. They can both swim, glide at ridiculous speeds, and jump in super high distances. They're basically the fastest creatures in the game if you use them properly. And they also have utility in the form of nursing creatures that are babies. Very, very useful creature, fantastic all around. It's also really easy to get in the early game when it's available. You can trap it in billboards and knock it out in a couple of shots. It also has the utility of laying different sized eggs so you can make different types of kibbles with it. The reasons for this thing being S tier never end. Fantastic creature, easily accessible, and just really fun to use. The Voidworm is up next, and I'm going to place it into the C tier. I don't think this creature is that good, but it's also nowhere near a bad creature. The utility for the Voidworm is all in PvP. There's pretty much no reason to ever use this in PvE. In PvP, you can use the breath to disable tech. For example, you can really wreck skiffs with it if you hit them. And its breath also shreds structures, including tech structures. In PvE though, the breath does nothing. The stats are better than normal Wyverns, but the difference isn't super noticeable, and is much less accessible than every other Wyvern in Ark. It also has the issue of no saddle just like every other Wyvern, so even though it is a bit bulkier and a bit stronger, it's still not super strong compared to other flyers that get saddle armor. Speaking of the skiff, it's going into S tier. The skiff is ridiculously fast, you can store a ton of stuff on it, it's incredibly tanky, and you can get basically unlimited value out of this in either mode. You can either throw a Strider on it and just go farm anything into your heart's content, or you can go fly around the map in PvP to relocate stuff, raid people, scout, do whatever you want. The skiff is so fast, so strong, has so much room for you to do stuff on the back of it. The thing is basically unstoppable. It's basically putting you in creative mode when you play the game. S tier for sure, way too overpowered. Moving on. The Cinemacrops is next, and I love the Cinemacrops. I'll throw it into the A tier, pretty close to S. The Cinemacrops is basically a mini tech chest plate that you can get in the early game. You can tame it with chitin, so it's really easy to get. It scares off small enemy creatures, which is really useful in the early game. And you can bring this into any cave in the game, so it's a really great value bring. You can use this to get out of tricky situations, you can use it to glide across the map at high speeds, you can use it in all caves to make the caves easier, but in crouch caves especially where you can't fit a mount in, a Cinemacrops is a great choice. Just fantastic utility. It's not super strong statistically, it's very, very weak as a matter of fact, but as long as you don't get hit with any AoE attacks, it should be totally fine on your back. Absolutely love this thing, easy A tier. The Desmodus is up next, and I'm putting it into the S tier. The Desmodus has an incredibly long list of abilities that are all insanely OP. The Desmodus abilities include Lifesteal, Flying in Caves, good maneuverability like a Tapejara where you can go left, right, up, and down, a Dive Bomb ability, Latching onto walls, Echolocation to see your enemies, Invisibility at night and when you're latched to walls, allowing riders to use weapons on the back of it, Night Vision, and entirely skipping the tech cave portion of the Overseer fight. It also has good stats, it has a saddle, and once you get it down, it's not super hard to tame either. In PvE, it's probably the best flyer in the game, and in PvP, it's easily top 5. I literally can't justify putting it any lower than S. The last Ark Evolved creature I have on the list is the Fjordhawk, which I'm putting into the A tier. The Fjordhawk is incredibly convenient, especially if you get hit with a glitch, you can use it to get your bag back. For example, at the end of the Ice Cave on Ragnarok, if you get anti-mesh, you can have a Fjordhawk to retrieve your items for you because they're unobtainable otherwise. The fact that it offers quality of life like this makes it a really fantastic creature, but it's pretty much all it does. It is a shoulder mount too, which is nice, so it's well deserving of this slot. The first Ark Ascended creature I have listed down is the Dreadmare. The Dreadmare is going into the B tier for its synergy with the gas bags and its other farming abilities. The Dreadmare is incredibly good for farming. The Black Hole ability in general is very good, but besides that, the creature is pretty underwhelming. It does have a Griffin style dive bomb, but the dive bomb is a lot slower than the Griffin, and its magic abilities, while decent in concept, are not really that applicable to the real game from my experience, or they're super unnecessary. The reason it's B tier is because of that farming synergy and because of the fast movement speed around the map. The very decent stats and wider range of abilities don't necessarily hurt the ranking, but they really don't help it here because I just don't see the use case for it in that way. You can definitely get some value out of the magic every once in a while, but using it consistently and bringing it out over other flyer options every single time is just usually not the best choice. One more issue for the Dreadmare is that it's behind a DLC paywall, but it isn't the worst creature out of the ones that are behind paywalls because at least it brings something interesting to the game. The Oasisaur is next and I'm placing it in F tier. It's a flying saucer, I don't know why it's in the game. Just like the Dreadmare, it's behind a DLC paywall as well, but at least the Dreadmare has some useful applications. The only thing the Oasisaur is useful for is reviving a creature, but if you're playing Ark normally, you really never need to revive any creature. You can just breed multiple and get yourself backups before you ever go out. The Oasisaur has good stats too, but it's hard to put those to use because the target is so big and it's such a clunky thing. I think the entire gimmick of reviving a creature just takes away from Ark a little bit. It's supposed to be a survival game. Making death an impermanent thing that can be solved just doesn't really make sense to me. It is big and can be used as a mobile base as well, but there's other creatures in the game for that, and riding on the back of a giant Oasisaur disc thing is just not the best looking base anyway. If you want to argue it should be higher because reviving is strong and having a giant landmass base spot that you can move around is cool, I get it. I just don't think the creature is good in concept in the slightest, and I really don't see that much of a point in the use cases anyway, so I don't even think this is that biased. The Yeeling is second to last, and I'm placing it into the C tier. It's basically a mini Rock Drake with worse stats. It has the gliding ability just like the Rock Drake, but it also comes equipped with a feather projectile, which is pretty cool. It also has some other miscellaneous combat abilities that are pretty interesting to look into, but they're not really that strong in practice just because the Yeeling isn't that strong as a creature. It's also more accessible in the early game, which is nice, but the taming process is kind of annoying from my experience. I think the Yeeling is very solid. It serves a very solid role as an early game mobility mount and aberration until you can get to a Rock Drake, but the downside for it is simply that once you do get a Rock Drake, you're never using one of these again. Definitely a solid stepping stone creature though. And it's not behind a paywall, so Ark actually made a decently balanced, non-paywalled creature. Good job! And last, but certainly not least, we have the Drakeling from Ark Ragnarok Ascended. This creature I'm putting in the A tier for now because it has some really solid abilities. Firstly, it's a shoulder mount, which is awesome. It can store XP when you kill stuff, and then you can pass it on to creatures, which is very convenient for leveling up creatures at your base. When you transfer XP to creatures at your base, you have a chance of getting a treasure chest that you can go find loot from, which gives really good loot. And it prevents fall damage. Just a really nice creature, does a super cool job. There's 4 variants of it as well, which I think is an awesome touch. And there is a couple more things that I'm not getting into, but yet again, these are more brief overview explanations. I don't think the Drakeling is an S tier creature, but it's really, really good. It may be S tier for this very second, but once they nerf the drop tables a little bit for it, it'll definitely be A tier. It's also just hard for me to swallow putting a pay-to-win creature in S tier, so I'm just going to leave it in A tier, even though it's really on the fence. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Remember to click the links in the description or pinned comment to sign up. New and returning players who haven't played in the last 6 months on PC or consoles receive a massive bonus pack, including 100,000 Silver Lions, 7 days of premium account time, exclusive vehicles, and the Eagle of Valor vehicle decoration. Well, that's my list of every single flyer in Ark history ranked on a tier list. Thank you to my members for making these videos possible, and if you enjoyed this video, check the video linked on screen now where I rank Ark's 20 best cave creatures. See you there. Peace.